Test, test, test. Test.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's governing board meeting. Let the record show that all 5 members are present. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Mike Martinez to our board. It's your first meeting.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We do have a quorum. Mrs. Sagata-Jones, do you have any changes or recommendations for the agenda?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board. On consent agenda item 3M, it reads a sole source, and actually we just want to make sure that it's recorded accurately on the last page of those sole sources. It says that the awarded vendor is Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, and they provide the services related to gifted co-get testing. Actually, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt is the parent company, and the actual company where the product comes from is Riverside Assessment.
Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented with the changes as noted?
I'll move to adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Mrs. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. At this time, please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the pledge. Thank you. Please rise. Mr. Martinez, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to item 3, consent agenda. Are there any items board members would like to have pulled for discussion? Hearing none, can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I motion to approve these consent agenda items 3A through 3M.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. We are moving on to...
3N.
We need to do 3N.
I apologize. I was thinking M.
Don't jump at you.
No, good thing. I've had my head in other things today. I do apologize.
We do it with love.
That's okay. With 3N,
You need a motion.
we need to have a motion for item 3N.
N.
I'll make a motion to approve item 3N.
I'll second.
Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez, you?
Abstain.
Thank you. Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Item 3N is approved with 1 abstention. Thank you. Okay, we're ready for jumps again. We do not have any information to report at this time. Moving on to action item 5A. Mrs. Sagata-Jones?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, this evening we will look at the approval of the 2019-2020 expenditure budget revision, number 3, as presented by Mr. Mike Barraga.
Madam President, members of the board, as we're approaching May 15th, which is the statutory deadline to do the final revision, that's what we've been accustomed to for many, many years. You may be aware that more recently the Auditor General's Office provided notification that the May 15th deadline was extended to, I believe, July 30th, if my memory serves me correctly. We thought it was important that we continue to do this, what I think is going to be the final revision. However, if anything changes, we may be coming to the board with a final revision. But I'm going to walk you through the presentation. Overall, from a budgetary standpoint, there's not much change. You will be seeing some slides because we felt that it was going to be important that maybe we kind of bring you along a little bit with this financial roller coaster that we've experienced. And so I really wanted to spend some time highlighting that. And as always, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have as it relates to that. What we wanted to do a little bit differently is this first slide is really giving you the adopted, the revised number 1, the revised number 2, and the revised number 3. And we just wanted to show you kind of how that's fluctuated. In the first column, under adopted, you approved of the budget to be $72 million. And then it declined to 69.6, and then it slightly went up to 71. And then the revision before you is really a difference of about $248,000 on the override. And what I do want to point out is that 9.5, we think that's overstated slightly, but the Department of Ed believes that's the amount, so we went with it. Know that we may revise it down to that 9.2 in revised number 2 column. But what I really want to point your attention to is kind of keep this budget balance carry forward in the back of your head here. The 1.8 to 2.7, that's really key, and that has been key over the last several months. So a little bit more specific. The adopted budget, which again you approved middle of July, and then when you revised in December, the revenue control limit, we lost $2.9 million right off the bat because of that lower enrollment. The override, because the override is contingent upon the revenue control limit, we also lost $436,000. When you combine the loss of students and you take the revenue control limit and you take the override amount, the district lost $3,348,000. That's significant. What helped us was you can see that budget balance carry forward of $901,000. Some of you have asked over the last several years about budget balance carry forward and the importance of that with current year funding, all these other variables. When we do the annual financial report, which occurs in October, that's when we actually know what that budget balance carry forward is from the old year into the new year, right? So just kind of think about it for a second. In the summer, we're providing you what we think the budget is based on what we're seeing in the accounting system. It's not until we actually close the prior year that we really know what that carry forward really is. October 15 is when we present the annual financial report. That's when we really finally know how much money is left over, or not, in the prior year into the new fiscal year. It is because of that $901 million that at that point in time, we only felt or saw a reduction of $2.4 million. Does that make sense? So far, so good?
Well, I wish you really had 900 million.
Did I say 900 million? 901,000. My apologies. This conversation is going completely different. So thank you for that correction, Board Member Smith. But does that make sense that because of that, that softened the financial blow to the district? What we wanted to do is now compare revised number 1, revised number 2. In that revised number 2, the RCL increased slightly to 1.2. And I think it was President Pimentel that asked, what's Group B? And you asked that question, and I walked you through there, the Group B, students with disabilities, and we saw an increase there. Those kids are getting additional funding because of their disabilities. So that's where we saw that increase. That, in this case, helped us, and we generated $1.25 million more in that revenue control limit. We also earned a little bit more in the override, because remember, the override is contingent upon the revenue control limit. So when we revised in February, we actually gained another $1.4 million. So I just want to walk you through this on this financial roller coaster from July to December to February to now. And then just finally, this budget is really the difference of 248, which is really the override. We do believe that the department has that calculation wrong, so we do believe at some point the 9.5 that you have on page 7 of your expenditure budget, it might more likely be the 9.2. So just kind of keep that in mind. That's the potential variable between what finally gets realized. I think this is an important slide. It just kind of shows what the enrollment with the ADM was in 2001. And this is how we budgeted. In 2019, our 100th day was 11,335. We projected, based on the demographic study, 11,123. But when we revised in December, we saw, based on our 40th day, a greater decrease than what we had projected. And then a slight increase. And then between the revised number 2 and the revised number 3, just a 180 difference. I kind of keep using 2014, even 2015. If you look at the decrease for the last 5 years now, specifically, you're looking at 12,884 to this, what I think will be the final revision, 10,813 students. So that's a pretty significant swing. And just historically, just so that you can see that carry forward, I do believe the 2021, when we create that column, that you're going to see a lower dollar amount than a 2.7 and a lower percentage of 5%. And just remember that while we showed 2020 and we showed $2.7 million, that's money left over from 19 into 20. I think on numerous occasions we've shared with you what the concerns and challenges are with being overly conservative in revenue projections, and then also we shared with you what overstating the revenue projections could be. It's a double-edged sword, and that balance, and that's a very difficult balance. Just on the capital side, one of the biggest factors in any fluctuation through the last 4 different budget versions has been that carry forward. In this revision, there's overall, I think, a slight decrease of about $70,000, but you're going from, more about 50,000, 8.6, roughly 50,000 overall decrease from the last time we presented to you. And, I think this slide, these are very familiar to you, and it just shows that from 2009 to 2020, we've lost about $41.1 million. Of that, 38.1 has been specific to capital. And my analogy is always this: with that money, we could probably build two running schools, just to kind of put it in perspective a little bit. I'll be really small. My apologies. I think the last several board members to you, we have provided you with some of the things that we've had to do in shifting M&O expenses to other appropriate funds. I just wanted to reiterate that here, and we broke it down for you. There are no longer, at least not as of today, there are no financial safeguards. When we went from prior year funding to current year, I believe it was 1 year, that there was a hold harmless clause in statute. So if your enrollment dropped, you automatically defaulted to prior year, but that was a one-time did see an increase in per pupil. And as enrollment decreases, that's just going to be loss of revenues, not only in the revenue control and the annual budget, but on all other sources of funds. You're just going to, it's a trickle effect, right? The annual budget, the way that I explain to people, that's our bread and butter, right? That's the biggest source of revenue the district receives, but it also impacts all those various other grants. And yeah, I think the superintendent has consistently talked about increasing enrollments are a priority. It's a priority of this board, of this district. Marketing, I think you've seen that. I hope you've seen what's in the Glendale Star the last 4 weeks now, I believe. You've seen our buses that have our logo, the All In for All Kids. You know, we're really trying to put that Glendale logo out there pretty consistently. I believe at the next board meeting, we will have a demographic study for you. I believe it's scheduled for the next board meeting. It's going to be a continuation of some of the discussions that you heard Rick Kramer talk about. Obviously, he's updating it to reflect additional information, and because he has a 10-year projection of what he thinks our enrollment is going to be. Just excuse the January 1st. Obviously, there's an increase in minimum wage. It's not $11 to $12. It's based on inflation, and I don't know what that is. So, as I was looking at that, I realized that it's 12 to something else. Really. So, just kind of keep that in mind. And you know, we've been pretty consistent about the challenges of trying to juggle all these loss in revenue and what that means really, you know, for the 5 of you who live in the district, how we perform will impact your taxes. So it's important that, one, we provide our staff and our students in our community with resources that are needed, but also do that responsibly and not overspend or create a situation where you, the homeowner, are paying more in taxes because our bond rating has been downgraded, and now we're paying more to borrow money. So those are things that impact you, not just as a board, but as a taxpayer that lives and pays taxes. Madam President, members of the board, I believe that does conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have or require additional clarification.
I have a question. Have we looked into how things may affect the budget going forward with coronavirus extensions and problems?
Madam President, members of the board, I think we are having those conversations. What I would say from at least the financial perspective is what impact will coronavirus have on enrollment? Does that mean that we will have a greater decrease than what we project? And so what does that mean? Does that mean that more kids will come to Glendale because it's a traditional school district versus a other non-traditional setting, right? I think those are things that we're going to have to really try to understand, and I think it's difficult. I don't know that we know that, right? But I think we need to have those conversations, and I would also stress, for all these reasons, is why we have to be conservative and fiscally responsible, because we cannot afford not to get it right.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I had mentioned to you before, I think one of my fears is that with this virus, of course, the state is lost and is losing a lot of money. And with education taking up half of the budget, you know, there's really, we're the target for decreasing, you know, for going in there and them trying to balance the budget, and they would have to cut funds, I would think, in the largest area, which would be education. That's my fear.
So, Madam President, to Board Member Wilson's point, if we're losing enrollment, and coupled with the budget being balanced on the back of education, those are stressors that put us at a complete disadvantage, right? It's at a minimum to double negative just right there.
If the legislature goes back and makes cuts, is it for our current year, or will it be for the 2021, or can it be both?
Madam President, members of the board, I've often heard them say we can make and change laws, right? So I think there could be possibility. I don't know which direction they would pull this. I think that they're talking about potentially, at least in the last JLBC report that I recall, there could be up to a $1.6 billion shortfall. So again, to the point that Mrs. Wilson made is, if they're cutting education and we're losing enrollment because of that, you know, it kind of feels like that's a double negative. Well, you know, it's not advantageous to the district. So I don't know what they're going to do. I would hope that some of the gains that we've made in education in the last couple of years, they will somewhat honor that and try to protect that. I have no idea what direction they're going towards.
Okay, is there any further discussion or questions? Do we have a motion to approve item 5A?
I'll move to approve item 5A.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, motion passes. We're at item 5B, employment of coordinator. Mrs. Sagata-Jones?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the appointment of Ms. Melissa Mars as coordinator for human resources, salary and benefits commensurate with other coordinators.
Do we have any questions or discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the employment of Ms. Marza as coordinator for human resources.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item 5C, employment of assistant principal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the appointment of Ms. Patricia Mastropolo as assistant principal of Coyote Ridge, salary and benefits commensurate with other assistant principals.
Do we have any discussion or questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the employment of Ms. Mastropolo.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Item 5D, employment of assistant principal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the employment of Ms. Alba Cordova as assistant principal of Harold W. Smith School, salary and benefits commensurate with other assistant principals.
Do we have any discussion or questions?
I'll move to approve the employment of Ms. Alba Cordova as assistant principal to Harold W. Smith School.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
And Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Item 5E, employment of assistant principal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the employment of Ms. Rebecca Presley as assistant principal of William C. Jack, salary and benefits commensurate with other assistant principals.
Do we have any questions or discussion? If none, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the employment of Ms. Presley.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, motion passes. Item 5F, employment of assistant principal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the appointment of Ms. Marisol Molina as assistant principal of Challenger Middle School, salary and benefits commensurate with other assistant principals.
Is there any questions or discussion?
I'll move to approve the employment of Ms. Marisol Molina for the assistant principalship of Challenger Middle School.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. We are on item 5G, employment of assistant principal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the appointment of Mr. Jason Schnee as assistant principal of Melvin E. Sign School, salary and benefits commensurate with other assistant principals.
Do we have any questions or discussion? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the employment of Mr. Schnee.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, motion passes. We are now at item 5H, employment of assistant principal.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, it is recommended the governing board approve the employment of Mr. Clifford Vellucci as assistant principal of Glendale Landmark School, salary and benefits commensurate with other assistant principals.
Do we have any questions or discussion? If there are none, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the employment of Mr. Belushi.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Motion passes. We are now on item 5I, political agenda priorities and proposals.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, the governing board will consider taking action to approve its top 5 political agenda priorities and proposed issues to submit for consideration of Arizona School Boards Association's 2021 political agenda.
Do we have any discussion on this item?
Oh, I like the items that have been brought to us by the executive team, and I do feel, though, that just the full restoration of the DAA is needed, but I also feel like with this upcoming agenda, especially with a shortfall with the state budget, that I think that us as a district, it would be important for us to say to keep the funding that we have, not cut it, so I think that there, needs to be something of that manner on our priorities.
Like a safeguard on existing funds?
Yeah.
I think we should stick with the aggressive look to, you need to adequately accelerate the full restoration. We're not quite there yet, and I think we need to, point out that needs to happen. We're, not just to be complacent with not, cutting, but we need more.
Right.
So
somehow in here, it's, combining the importance of both. So I think rewording it, way that we expect, the full funding of our DAA plus no cuts to education.
So include in that first line item, accelerate full restoration and don't take anything.
Yeah, that's right. Don't cut.
Don't cut any money. And
take it from other departments.
Leave our kids alone.
There you
comment,
go.
though.
Accelerate full restoration while
Safeguarding current
funding.
I also think with the whole COVID-19 thing, something that became, we always knew it existed, but I think it became glaringly apparent, the infrastructure for internet access for our students, should they need to be educated from home, because we don't know what's going to happen with this. We don't know what may happen 5 years from now. We're now kind of seeing 3 pandemics within 2 decades. So I think that also maybe can be submitted as one of those additional priorities, is the technology and internet access piece for students across the state.
Madam President, members of the board, you'll have to select how they're presented by ASBA, and then you can add an additional cover sheet with your other comments. So all 5 could be submitted, and then you could add your other comments to that as well. I think that would be acceptable, since that there has been a change since these have come out with COVID-19, and I would say why you're wanting to make additional.
So
Is
where
this
would
our
you
opportunity?
there's places on the back.
On the form.
On the form to add another
Okay.
recommendation.
So how would you like to?
The state needs to put a priority on internet access and technology access statewide for students. It can't be just when they're sitting in a classroom. It just can't, as we're finding out very harshly right now.
I think that's very good. Thank you.
I think it seems like it's a utility and needs to be treated as such, and a lot of students and families are caught sort of unprepared in the worst possible way during this situation. And I think it's a nice way to kind of break this up, because I like the 5 priorities. My only issue with them is that it's 5 ways of wording the exact same thing. Every single one of these is additional funding, just in a different spot. I think having a way to break up the monotony of those priorities might make some of those items stick out a little bit better.
In addition to that, Madam President, members of the board, because when the executive team met with this, it was prior to everything we're dealing with right now. But number 5, support policy that addresses adequately funds legislation related to student mental health and wellness. And I think that's going to be critical considering the situation in which we're in now.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that needs to almost include our staff.
Absolutely. It's the entire community.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Anything anybody else wants to add? Are we okay with the priority of this? Does it need to be prioritized?
I don't think it needs to be
It just
listed
needs
in
to
any
be- Not
order,
numerical.
no.
No.
Okay.
No, we don't want to have that debacle like they did at the delegate assembly 2 years ago.
Maybe I wasn't at that one.
Where the number of order was the issue.
Actually, I think I was at
You
that
were
one.
at that one,
I was in the
yes.
back row. Yes.
We put them on a paper in some sort of circle.
It's funny how contentious things get. Okay. So we have, to number 1, we can add accelerate full restoration while safeguarding current funding.
You'll just do comments. You'll do other comments at the end.
Oh,
We won't,
so
we'll
that
leave
one-
these.
We have to leave it the way it
Leave
is.
leave
Okay.
it the way it is.
Why do we have to leave it the way it is?
Because you have to choose their priorities that have been presented to you, and then you add other comments.
Then you can add to it, but this is what they're asking you to vote on.
You're selecting from the priorities ASB as presented.
Okay.
Okay,
Then we will add 2.
okay.
Mhm.
So we will add the safeguard current
Comments.
funding and priority on technology, internet access for students. Place a priority on that. Okay.
So the recommendation is the governing board will consider taking action to approve its top 5 political agenda priorities and propose issues to submit for consideration on Arizona School Boards Association 2021 political agenda with comments.
Do we have any further discussion? Can we get a motion to approve item 5I?
I'll move to approve item 5I.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mrs. Bartels?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. We are moving on to item 6A, call to public procedures.
Yes, Madam President, the governing board will discuss procedures for call to public in relation to COVID-19 social distancing guidelines. I think this is as a result of following when we were on the ordinance of stay-at-home. Now that that has been lifted, it is possible that we can do, no longer participate if the board wishes in virtual board meetings. You could do, under the expiration of the stay-at-home order, a regular board meeting. We would just need to do, according to what is in the governor's recommendations in the state, is we would have to maintain the best that we could 6 feet apart, and then also based on capacity, how many you could hold in that 6 feet apart area. So you could count off 6 feet in the room. We could figure out what that capacity is, and then you could then have that's all you could do. Or then you can continue to do virtual, and then with the call to public, the recommendation would be that you have them email to an email what their call to public is going to be, and we would read those as they would normally do. If they were here, they'd bring us a slip. We would read that to them. So those would be some of the recommendations.
Okay. Because that's why I had requested this item be brought forward, because going into this nightmare that we're all experiencing right now, to me, that just did not sit well, of cutting off the ability for people to reach out to us and, voice their concerns, whether we can actually do anything or not, that's going to just be the way it always is. So I wanted to, if we could, make sure that we do develop a process. So even if we're still doing the meetings this way to, safeguard as many people as possible, still have an alternative way for that, call to public piece still being in here. I did not like it just disappearing.
Sure. What would you, if we continue to conduct our meetings this way, what would your recommendation be?
Either having it set up so that, like Ms. Sagata-Jones had offered, that they email the information and it be read into minutes. I have no objection to that. Or even if it was, they let us know, I'd like to speak on this topic, and here's my number, and one at a time is called, so it's audio. Either way, I didn't know
Well,
what our
complicated
technology.
for us to be able to do that.
Okay.
We've looked at that technology-wise, but,
About just allowing so many people in the room, and then especially those that are doing the call to the public, of course, would be allowed in, but you could do 6 feet apart with chairs and then alternating rows where there are no people allowed to sit,
right.
spreading those out, but especially those making a call to the public would be allowed in.
Mhm.
Yeah, so, because I'm thinking there has to be a way, that's what this is teaching everybody. You have to learn how to make adjustments and course corrections through all this.
Are there any other suggestions?
Do we don't have to have it in this.
No, we do not.
We do?
No,
No.
you mean in here?
In here?
No,
don't
we
have
do
to
not.
have it
We
in
can,
here.
long as we post it somewhere, we can have it somewhere else.
So if we did it, I don't know, say in the school cafeteria next door where there's more room for people to spread out. And
Then, that's an option. Then you go into, you're getting into a large gathering. And so even though you're 6 feet apart, you're exposing people because you're in a larger gathering. So those are things you have to think about,
So I think, if there's a way to,
Because remember, schools are still remain closed.
Right.
And so it's still do as much as you can virtually. And then if you do bring back, that's a gradual transition, but then also adhere to, rather, the gathering's really 10, but depending on location, and then try to keep everybody 6 feet apart, so.
and not coffee.
Mhm.
No, I think if we can, have that set up that, even something emailed in or mailed in that is going to be read at the next meeting type of thing, I have no objection to that. I just want to be able to give people that opportunity, whether it's parent, community member, staff member.
I agree. I think it's important for our community to hear, for us to hear our community and their concerns. So going forward, I went to a grocery store and we weren't allowed to go in closely behind another person. So would that be something we can look into as well, where we could, okay, we have someone that wants to come in and sit, if we chose to go the route of having 12 people here, we just throwing out a number, where we have them walk in, wait for that one person to get 6 foot away and let somebody else in at 6 foot.
Personally, I would feel safer for everybody involved doing that only one person at a time coming in to speak.
Right. Are there any other questions, concerns? So
No.
do we need to,
I'm writing down, see legal counsel, see
Right.
legal counsel. I'm writing everything down, but I'll seek legal counsel and get back, because there's some things I'm pretty sure we may not be able to do.
so should we, do we need to decide first how we're going to conduct our meetings?
No, I think just giving direction, asking that, administration find a way that allows everybody to still be safe but still be heard, to kind of map that out.
Maybe they could come back to us with.
Yeah, we'll send a proposal out to legal counsel that if we wish to do, move away from virtual, and then if we do, to do public comment, I think the easiest way for public comment is for them to email it, and then we just read it, because then that's all record, we have that. I would hate to do the mail-in, because if it doesn't get here, then, I don't want it to be viewed
Right.
as we didn't get it. And so I think you just email it as you do when you come into the board meeting. You submit your paper right at the beginning of the board meeting. It's time for public comment. We have the email address up there. They email it and we read it that way.
Well,
And then-
plus we did that with how people can, participate observing the meeting. We put the information on there. It's either
yes.
on this channel or you can call in and listen by phone.
Yes.
So, if we have that kind of information right there saying, hey, you must email prior to such and such time on such and such date.
Well, I would do it like by 5 o'clock, we open up the email at that time.
Right.
I just think it's important to just let them come in. I think, things are opening, and as Ms. Sagata Jones said, she can still seek the legal counsel, but I would like to have people be able to come in here if they would like to address us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's important that they are able to show up and like I said, maybe only those that are addressing would be the ones in, maybe.
Well, there's plenty of room back here to, put people 6 feet apart.
Yeah, we could put a limit on how many come in.
Right.
So since this is an action item, it's not.
It's not an
It's just
action item.
discussion.
It's a
Oh,
discussion.
okay, my bad.
So now,
So-
right now, the administration can come back with
Well,
what we can do.
We'll come back with what you can do,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Any further discussion? Moving on to item 7A, future meetings and agenda items.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, we have a scheduled meeting for May 28th. It will be a special meeting beginning at 4 o'clock, and this is where we would like to continue with the study session, declining enrollment and budget impacts. As you saw with the presentation today, what we're faced with and the unknown. We'd like to bring in the demographer and continue with the study session so we can prepare for that. Even though we are in the middle of a pandemic, we still have to function as an organization prior to what it looked like before the pandemic, so I'd recommend that. At the same time, part of that study session, I'd like to devote some time to discuss COVID-19 and what it may or may not affect for the 2020-2021 school year.
Did you say you wanted to start that at 4?
4 o'clock. Typically, this time of the year, we begin board meetings at 4 o'clock, if that's acceptable to the board.
Mr. Martinez?
Works for me.
Okay. We've pretty much gotten that part of it down. We're just checking in with you too.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, and are there any other items or?
No,
Or
I
just
think
add-
that actually added on just addressed one of my past requests, so I'm good.
I had written the things that she had mentioned for that, but I also want to make sure that when we have the study session, that we have what was mentioned in our slideshow about reduction in expenses as part of our budget impacts.
And, I'm sorry, I was here then. Could there be at some point before the beginning of school where, and this can be done in a board memo, but address the changing and the possible changing of the amounts for extra pay?
Yes.
And then are we going to be able to, maybe during this time, during the study session, can we have a report on the survey? Will we have any information on
Which
this?
survey?
The survey on the COVID.
Oh, yes. Okay, sorry. Yes.
Okay. Are there any other items? Moving on to item 8, summary of current events. Mrs. Sagata-Jones.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, first of all, congratulations to all of our new assistant principals. We're excited. Welcome to GSD, so we'll see you in person soon. This week and then next week, we're doing, the closing of our schools. So teachers have been coming in on staggered times. Students have been picking up their stuff. Next week, we'll have students will be picking up dropping off their Chromebooks. We do have scheduled for next week the virtual 8th grade promotions, and Ms. Powell is giving everybody a copy of those times. I thank you for doing your recording. You've been plugged into schools' virtual presentations, and we've reviewed them, and they're great presentations, so please take time to look at those. and they'll be announced. Also, you have the dates of all the end-of-year celebrations. We'll do those on Tuesday, and that will be from the governing board. We'll do it just like we do a governing board meeting. It will be with our IT and executive team, and we'll be announcing those. So that will be taking place then. Also, we've been just working on trying to wrap our minds around COVID-19. What does that look like for us? And we've been doing that. Really concerned about our families. I think it was said it's just not about staff, but it's about students and their parents, the community. Really concerned about social emotional, really concerned about secondary traumatic stress, which is a result of COVID-19, let alone COVID-19 and how it has affected many of our communities. So that's up there. With that, you saw a survey that went out. The survey really was just to help us wrap our minds around what is the community thinking and what is staff thinking. When I last looked at the survey results, and that was like an hour before I came in this evening to the meeting, we had over close to 1,000 responses and a lot of very concerned on those. Some of the ones where the most weighted concern was on the meal setting. Will we be able to continue to feed our families? The immunocompromised staff and students was high priority, if not the highest. Also, social distancing outside of the classroom, what does that look like? Sanitization was a concern, and then also just the cleaning of technology and instruments were concerns at that time. And so we will, again, that's why I wanted that on the study session to discuss, and those results will be brought. We did not add a comment box at this time because I just wanted to figure out, we talked as a team, what is on people's minds, what are the top priorities, and then from there we gather additional information. Hopefully we can get into, over the summer, some committees on how we're going to address each of these. It is our understanding that Arizona Department of Education will put out some guidelines for us by the end of May, because there's a task force working on that, and I've been keeping on top of that as well. So hopefully by the study session, we will have what Arizona Department of Education is recommending, as well as the state of Arizona, as well as USDOE, and then we can make a true plan of return to school, what that may look like, and when that return may occur. So other than that, that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith.
I'm going to echo congratulations to all our assistant principals, and we look forward to meeting them and them doing great jobs in our schools. And I'm looking forward to all the award ceremonies, and that will be exciting to see who I don't know, I guess it's the top winner is. But they're also well deserving every time we go to these, so it's so hard to just choose one. And then I also wanted to just share a little bit, about, home with a child now that's, been going through this for a while, and, I've mentioned it each time, but I'm going to let you know that my child's tired of this type of learning and ready for the end of the school year. But what was nice also is that the high school district is offering virtual summer school classes, and so I thought that was nice of them to offer it to students that were in 6th through 8th grade, and there's such a wide variety of options for them. And I just hope that that we can get back to our normal real soon.
Thank you. Mr. Martinez.
Just like to reiterate, again, congratulations, new assistant principals. You've done a great job, and looking at the resumes, they look very well prepared for this new job for them. Thank you again for allowing me to join this new opportunity on the school district board. I look forward to several exciting months in the future here with all the challenging decisions that we'll see before us. On a personal note, I too am looking forward to the end of quarantine. I've been working on my quarantine beard for about 3 weeks now. It got a little too scruffy. I had to trim it down a little bit, but other than that, the family's surviving. Some kids are doing great with the online school, and some kids maybe not so much. So I'm hoping for a positive news about what's going to happen in the fall, but you know, like all things, you prepare for the worst and you make sure kids keep on task.
Thank you. Mrs. Bartels?
Ditto on all the congratulations and welcome aboard, Mr. Martinez. I just want to remind our community to please access the survey. We do need to hear from you. We all are being impacted by this, and some may not be as impacted as others, but we do need that perspective. Congratulations to all our students that are promoting up and that will be going off to high school, and it saddens me that we don't get to participate in those promotions this year in the normal way and shake all those hands. I think, as bad as this is, I think this is also a great opportunity for our young people and our families to revisit the fact that we have to learn how to adjust. I think we've gotten too complacent that things are this way and that's how it goes. And this is an opportunity for all of us to kind of learn those, we've got to relearn those coping skills on how to, traverse, things that don't feel good to us. So I just hope everybody stays well. I can't believe next week is the end of the school year already. And please stay safe.
Thank you. Mrs. Wilson?
Ditto on all the congratulations to our assistant principals, and welcome to those that are new to the district. Welcome to our family. Congratulations to our 8th graders. This must be a very difficult year for them and their parents and family. It's not easy to give up that one-on-one and being able to get up on stage and wherever and shake hands. So, I feel for you, but want you to know that we're thinking about you and we do congratulate you. Mr. Martinez, congratulations. He and I have served on the trust board for a few years now. Do you know how many?
It seems like a lifetime.
But we will miss you, but we're gaining you in another area, so, that's good. And just with the opening up of the state, please practice social distancing. We want you back in the fall healthy, and so practice that during the summer, and just stay safe.
I'm going to echo everybody's comments. Congratulations to the new assistant principals. Welcome to GESD. To all of our students promoting, whether it's 8th grade or kinder, congratulations. Welcome to Mr. Martinez. We look forward to the great work you're going to do in the board here with us. And to all of our teachers, thank you so much for everything that they're doing. All of our staff, that they've worked so hard. As Mrs. Bartel said, we look forward to shaking everyone's hands for promotions and all the awards ceremonies, and we do miss that. So high five, air high five, because I don't know that the shaking hands, as you said, that it's going to be a new normal.
Yeah.
But we are excited for everybody. We are looking for everyone to come back in the fall. And
Madam President, members of the board, also too, we've had outstanding teachers and administrators and students and staff, but special thank you to our families and our parents out there, because it's been difficult, and we all have our own story about COVID-19 that we're living daily, and we don't always know that, but interconnectedness has been extremely important. Empathy and resilience is extremely important during these times. So special thank you to all of our parents and families out there.
Agreed. Yeah. I echo that as well.
Yes.
Okay. We're at the end of our meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for tuning in. Everyone stay safe and have a good night.